So something you may have noticed is that when I compare games in broad strokes, or in general, I try to compare games that are very similar to each other. But sometimes games are so similar and have so much in common that it's uncanny. And in those situations, I like to compare the games directly. So, welcome to Watchmen The End Is Nigh / Kick-Ass 2. Watchmen The End Is Nigh is an amazing licensed beat-em-up that has very satisfying combat, strategy that relies on the characters' personalities to fuel their distinctive combat styles, a combo system that encourages creative chaining, but also discourages button mashing, and allows casual players just as much chance to complete the game, just in a less show-offy fashion. And Kick-Ass 2 tries to do a surprising amount of the same things. It also has a system in place to discourage button mashing, the exact same system in fact. It also encourages creative chaining of combos into each other, but it makes it less apparent how to do so to the player, making the game more difficult for the casual audience, and also trusting them less with the game's challenge, by telegraphing attacks far more clearly to the point of it being a little bit insulting, and also giving the player an invincibility button. The character's personality also doesn't inform his moveset beyond a comedic level, and the variety in combos goes almost completely to waste because there's only a couple you would ever actually want to use in any given situation. The combat style, flow of the gameplay, and even regenerating health are almost beat for beat the same as Watchmen The End Is Nigh, with only one notable exception to the mechanics. So I think playing the two side by side to show how you do a licensed, slow-paced beat-em-up very, very right and then very, very wrong is a good idea. In this video we're going to be looking at the first chapters of Watchmen and Kick-Ass 2. Both games conveniently come in 6 chapters, so we can cover one chapter of each game per video. So let's get started with the good stuff. Let's go into Watchmen.
Sing Sing, dead ahead.
Black as Moloch's heart down there.
Attention, Warden. This is Night Owl. Rorschach and I request permission to land and lend a hand.
Permission denied. The last thing we need right now is you damn costume vigilantes interfering and making the situation worse. We got it under control.
Not the way it looks from up here.
Warden, can your men reach the backup generators?
I told you we're handling things. Just stay the hell away. I'm warning you. Attempt to land, and my officers will shoot you.
Fine. If that's the way you want to play it.
Not the warm welcome we hoped for.
The Warden may not have rolled out the welcome wagon, but from the looks of things, it's up to us to try to help quell this riot.
So we're going to be playing as Night Owl. Night Owl and Rorschach's fighting styles are as different as night and day, just as the characters are as different as night and day. Rorschach's fighting style is more aggressive and features a dodge, as well as Rorschach being allowed to pick up weapons. Night Owl is far more technical. He has more complex combos he can block, and he can use his suit to do all kinds of fancy weird stuff. Now, the way the combo system in this game works is that if you want to perform a combo, you have to do the next hit in the chain after the current hit lands. You cannot just button mash. You cannot press the buttons early. You have to wait until the hit lands before you press the next button in the combo. Not many beat-em-ups do this. It works very well in Watchmen because the hits are very deliberate, very slow, and have a very, very clear indication. Not only is the hit recoil massive, not only is there a great amount of feedback, but in addition to that you can see at the bottom of the screen whether you've started a combo properly, because if you have, buttons will appear on the bottom of the screen informing you of where you are in the combo. This makes the game feel more like a rhythm game as opposed to just a normal beat-em-up. I assume the developers were aware the way they did combos was abnormal, because the usage of buttons on the bottom of the screen to show you where you are in your combo makes it a lot easier for normal people to grasp what's going on. Now, it's also important to mention that each combo is like a recipe for a different utility. For example, we have area attacks, stun attacks, and knockdown attacks. and we need to perform different combos to do all of them. Our most basic stun is simply 3 light hits, but we can do a more complex stun with light, heavy, light, which we can chain up with a heavy attack to knock the enemy over. We can knock the enemy down with 3 consecutive heavy attacks, and we can do an area attack by pressing light, heavy, heavy. The cool thing about these combos, though, is that they can be chained into each other. For example, to chain an area attack into a heavy attack, we can do light, heavy, 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 or to chain it into a maximum damage combo, we can do light, heavy, heavy, light, light, heavy. And if you really want to show off, you can add an extra light attack in there for light, light, heavy, heavy, light, light, heavy. This being the first level in the game, the enemies are fairly weak and they will go down with just 1 stun combo or just 1 knockdown combo, and then you can kick them while they're down to take them out for good. You can also throw enemies, which I assume you'll be seeing shortly if I can make it out here. Throwing enemies has very, very specific utilities. You usually only want to throw enemies when there's a clear pit to throw them into, but there are some other situations that you'll probably see. Now, you may think of the combo system and be like, okay, so I could use the combos, but what's to stop me from just button mashing, aside from the fact that I'd be missing out on cool combos? Well, the combos are basically necessary. When you do a combo, your character attacks faster. If you don't perform a combo successfully, the enemy will interrupt your attack and fuck you over. But if you perform a combo successfully, the enemy will not interrupt your attack. That's the difference. And it's a very big difference. Either you learn the rhythm of the game and do combos properly, or the enemies will interrupt your attacks and fuck you over. Those are your options. Now, there's another incentive to do combos properly in the fact that combos also deal more damage, and as was previously mentioned, perform specific utilities, such as stunning certain enemies, or knocking them over, or just plain getting them out of your way, or hitting multiple with an area attack. Night Owl's combos are a lot more varied and can be chained into each other a lot easier, but Rorschach has his own special utilities we'll see sometime in the far future. We do have a defensive option, in that we can block and counterattack after the enemy's blow hits, or just before it hits. The thing about the counterattack, though, is that the enemies all attack at different speeds depending on where you are in the game. So if you try to counterattack too early, as I do sometimes with these fellows, then you're likely to get hit in the face. I counterattack far too early a lot in this level, and that's because I'm used to endgame enemies which attack a lot faster. If you want the counterattack to work every time because you don't feel like showing off, then just wait until the enemy hits your block and then press X, or light attack on whatever console you're using. There is no special notification when an enemy is about to strike you. They don't glow or flash or have anything above their head. You just have to watch their movements. But this game's combat is fairly slow-paced compared to most 3D beat-em-ups and hack-and-slashes, so it's pretty easy to read the enemy's movements, and it also eases you into it. Late in the game, the enemies attack really, really fast, but early they attack slow enough that you can easily read their movements. One of Night Owl's special abilities is that he can electrify his suit, which allows him to deal more damage in addition to knocking down any nearby enemies when it's first turned on. You have to have your charge meter nearly full to do this, though. Coming up ahead, this game doesn't have many environmental hazards at all. Most of the challenge comes purely from the combat, but in this specific area, if you stand in the fire, you'll fucking die. Your health will just get peeled away at light speed. This also applies to the enemies, so if you want to throw the enemies in the fire, you can. But it may just be faster to beat them up, because sometimes they'll get up out of the fire and come after you. I really think it's worth pointing out that this game looks fucking gorgeous 10 years later. This game came out in 2009, and it still looks beautiful. It is running on max settings right now, granted, but still. When a game going for a somewhat realistic art style ages this well, that's fucking impressive. I have no idea how much budget went into the graphics of this game, but you'll see in later levels, which are even more graphically impressive, that it's to be commended what they did here. It's been ages since I read the reviews for this game. I know this game wasn't terribly well received, but I'm really, like... I'm sure I can figure out what the complaints would have been without having to look them back up. And I'm sure there was no shortage of game journalists utterly confused by the fact, or irritated by the fact that you couldn't button mash. Because a lot of people really like to button mash when they play beat-em-ups, and this game says no button mashing, you have to actually establish the rhythm and use the combos for their intended purposes. You actually have to time things properly. Even in some of the more like high-class beat-em-ups or character action games with a lot of really complex mechanics, they let you input buttons early. But in this game, you have to press the buttons in time with the animation. You have to, or else you're going to get wrecked. And I think that works again because of the hit feedback, the very deliberate animations that let you know exactly what combo you're doing, and, you know, the buttons that appear on the bottom of the screen. So that way you're never unclear what exactly you're doing at any given time. You know your attack hit, you know which button it was, and you know what to press next, because everything is telling you that. In a game where the entire idea is that you have to press buttons in a very specific rhythm, they did as much as they possibly could to make it easier for the player to do that. The game is like a series of little rhythm mini-games more than a beat-em-up, but I think a lot of action games are more like rhythm games when you think about it. So something I have yet to mention is that some enemies have weaponry, and weapons are your biggest enemy aside from not using the combo system properly. Regular hits, you can take quite a few of those, but hits from a weapon, 3 or 4 of those and you're down. 2 of them if you're talking about late game weaponry. You can get weapons away from enemies either by counterattacking an enemy with a weapon, or simply by knocking an enemy over. Either of them will get the weapon away from the enemy. Now, you may figure you might want to do something like prioritize enemies with weapons, but that's generally not a good idea. You're being attacked from all sides in most situations in this game, so you're just going to want to hit what's in front of you and counterattack anything that comes from behind, and you'll naturally disarm enemies with weapons, unless you get hit. Now, because you can take damage so quickly and die so quickly in this game, you do have regenerating health, and it even regenerates during combat. So as long as you manage to not get fucked for a significant period of time, then there's always a chance of a comeback. If I have a complaint about this game, it's that for most of the game it seems like it was intended to be challenging for the average person who plays video games and not a beat-em-up fan. Now, as a beat-em-up fan, I love this game, and I love what it brings to the table. The hits are very satisfying, there's great feedback, great sound effects. The character models, their animations, and the environment all contribute to that. But the game is pretty easy, for the most part. And I love the game to pieces. It's one of my favorite 3D beat-em-ups, and it feels really good to play it well. But there are parts in the game where the developer was like, oh man, this is gonna fuck him up for sure, and it's clearly meant to be super hard, but it's just not, because you've played beat-em-ups before, so you know what you're doing. That being said, this is one of those games where I played the demo like 300 times before finally buying the game. And the demo was this first level, and I played it over and over and over. So I fell in love with this game long before I even bought the full product, and I'm glad the game gets even better.
Seems like someone has orchestrated this, but I can't quite put my finger on it yet. Typical. City couldn't get the power back on 5 minutes faster?
No guards in sight. Not paid enough to rush headfirst into slaughterhouse.
Not like us, right? Well, whoever sabotaged those generators sure knew what they were
Keep
doing.
your hands where I can see them, damn it! You were warned to keep out of this. I ought to arrest you both.
No need to thank us. Just doing your job.
I take it you've got everything under control, right, Warden?
No thanks to you. But all the prisoners are back in their cells and accounted for. Except one.
Which one? Big figure?
No. It's Underboss.
Him? We put that gorilla away in '66.
Smarter than I remember. Used riot to cover his escape. Must have had help.
Explains the power outage. Guess it's up to us to bring him in again.
You two aren't going anywhere until we sort out how much damage your meddling caused. Dr. Manhattan?
And Silk Spectre, I see.
Can we be of any assistance?
Maybe 5 minutes ago.
Sorry, there was a cyclone threatening Sri Lanka to be dealt with.
Are you all right?
Fine. Porting always makes me queasy is all.
You're certain that we cannot be of service here?
Nah, we were just leaving. Isn't that right, Warden?
Yes, absolutely. No problem.
Very well. A plane carrying a Uruguayan rugby team will crash in the Andes in precisely 4 minutes 37 seconds, unless I intervene.
Thank you for your concern, Nigh.
Blue freak. Makes my skin crawl.
He might have been able to tell us where to find Underboss.
You look like you could use a drink, Daniel. Here the rum runner's always open.
Alright, so that was the first level of Watchmen. Now you've had your fun, so it's time to go play that other video game based on a movie, based on a comic book, that's startlingly similar in almost every way. Let's get to it.
If you're here, it's because you know who I am. Kick-Ass, the first real superhero and all that crap. Although technically, Mindy and her dad were the first. Hit Girl and Big Daddy. They're not as famous, but, well, they were a lot closer than I was to being superheroes. And if I was famous before, just imagine after the incident with the D'Amico family and more on Red Mist. Unfortunately, we also suffered casualties. Mindy lost Big Daddy. After that, she went to live with Marcus, a friend of her dad's. A good guy to tell the truth. He made her promise that she would give up his life, but I needed something more. The next logical step was a group of superheroes, and I needed training. Ow! Seriously, I'm getting sick of this. First of all, why aren't we working out in this disgusting dump?
This area is controlled by Shorty Wallace, a small-time dealer. He runs the car shop over there. Let's just say that this is the perfect place for your first field test.
Field test? What are you talking about? You really want me to walk into that shop and start trading punches with those guys? Just like that?
Don't be so chicken, Dave. When I was your age, my kill list was longer than Manfred von Richthofen's.
Manfred who?
The Red Baron, you dope.
Right. You forget that my dad didn't train me from the time I could walk to become a children's version of the Punisher.
So some things to notice about the cutscenes: the lack of proper audio balancing, the lack of voice actors that sound anything like the cast from the film. The art's okay, though. Alright, let's dive headfirst into the combat. So just like Watchmen's combat, the way this game works, you cannot perform a combo unless you press the button after the current hit lands. You have to wait for your current hit to land before you press the button again. Just like the other one. So, no button mashing. Just like Watchmen, you can counter enemies from any direction, but this time there's a dedicated counter button. So you just press circle or B to counter instead of pressing block first. And just like Watchmen, to Kick-Ass's credit, the hits are very deliberate. So you can tell exactly when you're supposed to press the next button in the sequence, because the first hit connects so cleanly, and the game is slow enough to allow this. This is something both Kick-Ass and Watchmen understood about the design, is that the game has to move slow and the hits have to be very deliberate and have good feedback if you're not going to let the player input buttons early. Something Kick-Ass doesn't understand is that you need to have distinctive animations for each combo. For reasons I cannot fathom, even though there are combos with specific utilities in this game, they do not have unique animations.
I can take you all! But what the fuck is that? This is offensive! Some kid might see that! No strong language in the streets, fellas!
So as I was saying, this game has specific combos with deliberate, specific utilities, just like Watchmen. For example, the knockdown combo is YYX. This right here. That's the knockdown combo. But the animation for the knockdown combo is different. It doesn't always play the same way each time, so even though you're pressing heavy light to do the knockdown combo, the animation could be different. The outcome is the same, but as you just saw, the animation can be completely different. So that's a very big difference between Watchmen and Kick-Ass, is that Watchmen had deliberate animations for each combo to let you know you were doing them properly. Kick-Ass, though, the animations are different. And there seems to be no rhyme or reason as to why they're different, besides visual variety. When I first played the game, I had an issue with the combo system for this very reason. I actually barely used the combos at all because I was under the impression I wasn't doing them properly, as different animations would play when I pressed the same sequence of buttons. But no, I was doing the combos properly. It's just that the animation that plays is different sometimes for no reason I can figure out.
Ass, Shorty and his gang are all shut up in the shop. Go up to the roof and use a taser.
What am I supposed to do with a taser?
Short out the electricity and jump into the shop by breaking the glass of the skylight. Then take advantage of the confusion to neutralize your enemies, Batman style.
What? Are you kidding?
Of course, you fucking moron. You short out the generator, and when everything's dark and they come out, you come down and whip their butts.
Something appreciable about this game's visual design is that areas you are meant to go in are marked in bright yellow. Something is bright yellow, you're supposed to go over there. There are even yellow graffiti arrows. Though sometimes the graffiti arrows pop in, so it's hard to see them from the distance you're meant to. But if you can interact with something or are meant to go somewhere, there's some yellow somewhere around there.
Hitler, I see some goths on the basketball court down there.
Uh-huh. Goths on a basketball court. Perfect. Tell me if you see Spike Lee attending a meeting of the Ku Klux Klan.
I'm serious! And they're attacking a masked hero! Got to go help him.
Who the hell do you think you are? A parkour expert? If you jump from that height, you'll break both your legs. Like it or not, the fastest way down to that basketball court is through Shorter's garage. Calm down and follow the plan.
One of the most common complaints about this game was the voice acting. I mean, people hated everything about this game, but the voice acting was one of the most noticeable complaints. And I guess that's fair, but I actually really like some of the voice acting, not Hit Girls. I think Hit Girls is awful. But some of the line delivery from Kick-Ass's voice actor is great, because he sounds like an absolute fucking dork, and that's what he's supposed to sound like.
Shit! What the hell happened to the fucking power?
It was me! Your drug empire is over, Shorty.
Drug empire? Who the fuck you think I am? Tony Montana? Where the hell did that guy come from?
It's Kick-Ass! He's some kind of superhero or something like that.
Shit, niggas. Kill that retard in pajamas.
Here is our introduction to big enemies. Big enemies can not be staggered by our blows. They can be knocked over with our knockdown combo, though. That's worth mentioning. Your knockdown combo still works on big enemies, they just can't be staggered. You can counter their attack the same as anyone else, though. No one is immune to being countered. We'll talk about the enemies with weapons in a bit, but we had to talk about large enemies first. So you got their idea. You can't stagger them. Oh, that guy's still moving.
This is a piece of cake. Shit!
Are you okay, Kick-Ass? Are you hurt?
Hurt? Of course not. It's just that these jerks from the shop are covered in grease and motor oil.
Grease? What?
I'm ruining my suit. Did you know a grease stain comes out worse than blood?
What is this, a fucking Tide commercial? Keep moving, you idiot!
I don't know who actually voice acts Kick-Ass in this video game, but if they got him to voice act Kick-Ass in the films or an animated feature or some shit, I wouldn't complain. I mean, I know he doesn't sound like Kick-Ass and he has a different accent, but that is irrelevant to his line delivery, which I think is great. So, one of the most interesting facets of this game, and perhaps the only thing it has going for it over Watchmen, is that when you get a combo that's high enough, Kick-Ass's hands will glow. And when they glow, he can perform a special function. He can tase enemies on the ground, or he can remove their weapons. Only when his hands are glowing. You have to get a high enough combo first, though, which means that you have to be good enough at the combat to not miss a combo, which also discourages button mashing. Being able to destroy downed enemies with a taser when your hands are glowing is a very useful ability that I wish I used the first time I played the game. That would have made things a lot easier. This section right here weirds me out, because this perspective change is very deliberate, but I don't know what they were going for. It just looks kind of strange.
Hey, how lucky! I'm picking up a Wi-Fi signal nearby.
Weren't you in a hurry to save that masked guy, Kick-Ass?
It'll just be a second. I'm a media sensation, hit girl. I owe it to my fans. All right, free Wi-Fi.
I don't know, I feel like this actor got the idea. I feel like he got the emotions he was meant to convey, and he got how to convey them. And I like it. I like his voice actor a lot. I doubt he's voice acted in anything else, because it was probably done in-house. Anyway, back to the combat. The combos are no less useful than they are in Watchmen, but it's a lot easier to miss them. And I don't mean it's easier to mispress, I mean it's easier to miss them in the sense that you'll miss their utilities because the way the animation works. There's a knockdown combo, there's a max damage combo, and you'll want to use both at varying points in the game. But you might not know if you're doing it properly because of the way the animation works, as was previously discussed. And in addition, keeping in mind this one is kind of hard to blame Kick-Ass for because I don't think many people would have thought of it, Kick-Ass doesn't have the buttons on the bottom of the screen showing you where you are in the combo. That was a great move on Watchmen's part, but I don't think many developers would have thought to do that, so I'm not going to say Kick-Ass should have thought to do that.
Shit! It's Dr. Gravity!
Dr. Gravity? What kind of name is that? It's not like he's the new leader of Spectre or something.
Don't tell me. Hit girl, he's another superhero like us and we've got to help him.
Like hell he's like us. Don't compare me with your bunch of masked idiots with profiles on the social networks.
The irony, though, is that even though Kick-Ass wouldn't think to have the buttons appear at the bottom of the screen, it would have fixed their issue with the animation, because you'd still know where you were in the combo. As it stands, it's hard to know where you are in the combo, because there's a lack of in-game feedback for what you're doing.
Back off, you bastards! If you don't want me to send you flying!
Leave him alone, you sorry-ass goths!
Well, well. Look what we've got here. Another twerp dressed in Technicolor. And we don't like Technicolor-dressed twerps, right, guys?
Oh, of course. You guys like to use your mama's makeup and sew suits out of fucking trash bags.
You're dead, you piece of shit.
So this game is all around a poor man's Watchmen, the end is nigh. The one thing I like about this game that Watchmen doesn't have, also here's the useless area attack, I'll explain that later. The one thing I like about this game that Watchmen doesn't have is the ability to use special functions whenever your combo is high enough. Like when your combo is high enough, I mentioned you can tase enemies on the ground or disarm them, and I think that's really cool. I think that encourages the player to keep the combos going as long as possible, and advocates for high-skilled play with a tangible reward. I'm not going to mention the finishers in Kick-Ass and Watchmen yet, because I feel like that will take some talking about, even though it's a very simple mechanic. I feel like that's something that needs time to be talked about, and this is almost done. Anyway, the ideas here are not terrible. The hitting doesn't feel terrible. The ideas for the combat are not terrible. It's just the execution that's the problem.
Dr. Gravity, are you okay?
Well, I feel like shit, but I think I'll survive.
Who are those fucking goths?
For the last few days, these gangs of goths have been attacking every masked hero they run into. They surprised me when I was on patrol and chased me until they cornered me on the basketball courts.
I'll make sure those sons of bitches don't get away, man.
Write down my cell number. We'll keep in contact.